So Minister Anand is here for a question. We'll start with one question on the phone. Le ministre Anand est là pour prendre les questions. On commence avec une question au téléphone. Opératrice, avons-nous une première question?
Est-ce que je pourrais dire quelque chose avant de commencer, s'il vous plaît?
Okay. Oui.
The reason I wanted to speak with you this afternoon is because today we have been in touch with our supplier, Pfizer, regarding the vaccine deliveries. Now that Health Canada has approved the vaccine through an independent regulatory process, and Pfizer will be shipping 30,000 doses of its vaccine to Canada, leaving Friday, arriving over the weekend for delivery on Monday to the 14 sites that have been previously identified by the provinces and territories. So this week has been an important week in our procurement efforts relating to vaccines, of course. We learned on Monday, of course, that there is going to be an early shipment of doses of vaccines from Pfizer, that these vaccines will flow through the month of December and then into 2021. Pfizer has committed to delivering 149,000 early doses to Canada, and those doses will begin to be delivered on Friday, arriving in Canada over the weekend and on Monday.
With that, we'll go to question, starting with question on the phone. Operator?
Thank you. Merci. Our first question, Mélanie Marquis, La Presse. Your line is open. À vous la parole.
Bonjour. Merci. Minister Anand, could we get more vaccines from Pfizer until, before the end of the year?
Do you mean in addition to the 30,000 that are leaving Friday, arriving Monday?
Yes.
Of course, yes. This is the first shipment of the vaccines that Pfizer committed to deliver on an early basis. Of course, that number is 149,000, and I mentioned on Monday that these shipments will arrive in waves throughout December and then into the new year. And so this is the first such shipment, which is why I think it is important for Canadians to know.
Okay, but I'm sorry. I guess I'm mixed up with the numbers. Did you say 149,000? Because what I had as far as figures go was 249,000 before the end of the year. And my question, actually, sorry for if I misspoke, but it was, could we get more than the 249,000 that
je m'excuse. Oui, je comprends maintenant. Oui, ça c'est vrai. It's 249,000. I'm reducing it because we are giving 2 doses per person. But 249,000 constitutes the early doses that we will get from Pfizer before the end of the year. It will begin with the shipment of 30,000 doses on Friday, arriving over the weekend and on Monday. And then there will be additional shipments to get us up to the 249,000. And then, as you know, our entire contract with Pfizer is for 20 million doses of the Pfizer vaccines, and those will continue to be delivered in the new year, including in Q1.
So I'll now take a question in the phone, in the room. Mackenzie?
Mackenzie Gray with CTV. Today, Major General Fortin said, kind of laid out the logistics line for the vaccines coming to Canada, and includes its stop in Kentucky before moving on to Canada. Previously, the Trump administration held up 3M masks. Are you concerned that they will hold up any of these vaccines because they are transiting through the U.S.?
Well, thanks for the question. It does give me an opportunity to highlight that the 3M masks did cross the border. We were able to negotiate with our supplier and with diplomatic channels to ensure that product crossed the border. We do not expect any holdup at all with regards to the Pfizer doses. In our contracting, we were very deliberate in ensuring that we had a diverse range of manufacturing facilities built into our contract so that we would be insured to access the supplies, the vaccines that we have contracted for.
We're starting with 14 places that the Pfizer vaccine will be able to go to. Major General Fortin today seemed to signal that the expectation is that number will increase. Is there a timeline and a number on when we can expect more locations will be able to hold the Pfizer vaccine?
Well, that's a great question. As you know, the federal government has procured 126 ultra cold and cold freezers to store up to 33.5 million doses of the Pfizer vaccines with existing federal capacity. We're also purchasing dry ice, and our plan is to be able to meet demand from the provinces and territories in terms of what is needed for freezer capability. And it is going to be a matter of the collaboration between Major General Fortin, the PHAC, and the provinces and territories to identify additional sites.
We have time for one question on the phone, one question in the room. Operator, do we have a next question?
Thank you. The next question, Tondra McCharles, Toronto Star. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister Anand. Just want to follow up on Mac's question about Kentucky and whatever might happen there. Could you talk about what recourse does Canada have if the U.S. were to somehow attempt to prevent further export of the Pfizer vaccine as it transits through Kentucky? Like, does it legally, what's its status once it lands in Kentucky? Is it not then a product that the U.S. can control under their export laws?
That's a very good question, Tonda. My understanding, based on our contracts, is that we have access to the doses that we have contracted for. We are given assurances by Pfizer that the deliveries will not be affected by what is occurring in the United States. And we are confident, therefore, that the company with whom we have contracted will ensure that those deliveries make it to our shores.
Okay, so Pfizer will, I guess, somehow, if it doesn't come through Kentucky, bring it via Belgium, I guess, is if I understand what you're saying there. So just if I could ask, through in the timeline that we have for the delivery of the 20 million of the Pfizer vaccines, you've said to us that you expect, or someone said to us anyway, we roughly expect 4 million Pfizer by the end of March, the end of Q1 2021. And the timeline today for overall immunization of Canadians sees, we have like an end date of the end of September. So when do you expect the rest of the 16 million of Pfizer to land? Can we expect them by Q2, or is that all the way out until the very end of the campaign? Do you have a suggested timeline on that?
Well, of course, we have built into our contracts windows of delivery with Pfizer vaccines and others pending regulatory approval arriving in Q1, Q2, and Q3. It is important to recognize, however, that there are a number of uncertainties at the current time regarding vaccine production and distribution. For example, as you can imagine, this is an intense global environment. There is competition for doses among jurisdictions, and we are fortunate in the sense that with Pfizer, Moderna, and a number of other suppliers, we got in very early, and we are at the front of the line with these distributors. So we are continuing to nail down the earliest possible delivery dates. You have seen that we have been effective in doing that, and we will continue to be ensuring the earliest possible delivery dates within these windows of Q1 and Q2 and Q3.
And we have time for one last question. Marika?
Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. Minister, we saw this report from the U.S. this week that the White House turned down an offer from Pfizer for even more vaccines. Did a similar situation happen in Canada?
Our relationship with our vaccine suppliers has proceeded on a very sophisticated and useful path. And in fact, we signed with Pfizer very early in August for the 20 million doses, and we've worked very well with them in terms of ensuring, as I said, early delivery and delivery in Q1 and proceeding from then on. We have had a very cordial relationship, and that did not occur in Canada.
Pfizer didn't offer to give more to Canada.
Well, we structured our contracts in a particular way, Marika. What I made sure occurred was that we contracted for a base number of doses. With Pfizer, for example, it was 20 million. And we also built options into our contracts so that we could be assured that we could go back to Pfizer and exercise those options if the Public Health Agency of Canada recommended that course of action. You saw that we exercised options with Moderna on Friday at the request of the Public Health Agency of Canada. So it's a different form of contract and a different form of negotiation. We wanted flexible contractual arrangements based on the uncertainty that existed at the time of contracting. So the way we ensured that we had access to additional Pfizer doses or that of any other vaccine company, for example, was to build in that flexibility via options that we could exercise at our discretion once we understood if that vaccine was effective. What's the option for Pfizer then? The option for Pfizer, I believe, is about 56,000 doses, and we are reviewing whether we would exercise those doses at the current time. Million. My apologies. 56 million doses. Yes, exactly. Well, you can imagine with any of these contracts, once there is regulatory approval, of course, we are considering the exercise of options. The reality is that we are concerned with the earliest possible delivery dates with these vaccines. And when we get assurances that we can get early delivery dates regarding options, there's a higher likelihood of us exercising them. Makes sense.
That's all the time we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Well, today we had some very promising news, as everyone knows, with the approval of the Pfizer vaccine by Health Canada. And really, I just want to thank the regulators and Health Canada team for working literally around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have a team of regulators assigned to each vaccine that is coming in for review, and it allows for ongoing review all hours of the day and night. And this is good news for Canadians. Obviously, it's the first, hopefully, of many approved vaccines in Canada. And c'est une bonne nouvelle pour le pays. Il y a beaucoup de travail à faire pour livrer le vaccin, mais nous devons aussi pratiquer les mesures qui protègent nos familles. So we need, in this time, as vaccines come out, not to let down our guard. We have to continue to practice the things that we know will protect our families and our communities, because obviously we have a ways to go. But it is, I think, a light at the end of the tunnel that this is a very powerful tool to protect each other and to save lives and stop the spread.
On that, we'll take questions, starting with question on the phone. One question, one follow-up. We have about 10 minutes with Minister Hajdu. Operator, do we have a first question?
Thank you. Our question is from Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. And if I could just ask the operator not to cut off the line, because I lose part of the answer when you close the line off after the question. Minister, thanks. Can you describe exactly, with as much detail as possible, the last several hours up until you got the word of it, and how exactly did you get word of the approval and what your reaction was?
Well, I work really closely, obviously, with Steve Lucas, who's my deputy minister at Health Canada. Obviously, the process is completely independent, so I never speak to the regulators. I have, of course, spoken to Dr. Sharma, but I don't interact with the regulators, although I have asked Dr. Lucas if I can thank them for their hard work, especially as Christmas approaches. And we have 3 other vaccines under review, so their work is not complete. Deputy Lucas told me that there was likely a decision coming this week on the weekend, and he couldn't tell me exactly when, but that the data had been received from Pfizer, the final set that they were waiting for, and that upon review of that data set, they would have a decision to approve. And as soon as that decision was rendered, he let me know. And my reaction was one of obviously a sigh of relief. I mean, of course, it wouldn't have been great if the decision had been that it wasn't safe in Canada and we had all these vaccines arriving. However, obviously, we would have accepted that, as the review is exactly that. It is to assess the safety and efficacy of the vaccine from a purely independent place. I will also say that I worked really closely with Minister Anand throughout the whole process. Of course, she has a relationship with the corporation on the procurement side, but Pfizer was part of, I think, their appeal in delivering early doses was the incredibly smooth and respectful relationship that they have with the Health Canada regulators. Of course, it's not the first time that they've worked with Health Canada, but we are, in fact, recognized around the world as extremely professional and extremely trustworthy. So I think having Canada's approval of Pfizer stands very well in the world for Pfizer's product.
Can you talk about the timeline ahead, and when you see, or when you expect that we might have word on the other three that are currently under review: Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Johnson?
Absolutely. So we do have 3 more vaccines under review. Again, as I said, each vaccine has their own dedicated team of regulators assessing the data as it comes in. Some data is not in yet from the corporations, and so the regulators can only work as fast as they receive the data. Having said that, look, this is positive news for Canadians in that we have such a variety under review, and in fact, we were one of the first countries to receive the Johnson & Johnson application. So again, just an indication of how well respected Health Canada regulators are and what an approval from Health Canada means in terms of a corporation's respect around the world for the safety and effectiveness of their product.
We'll now take a question from the room. Mackenzie?
Hi, Minister Hajdu. Mackenzie Gray with CTV. Earlier today, there seemed to be kind of contradictory information from Public Health about what the finalization of vaccine timelines would be. They sent slides out to the gallery that said 100% vaccination in Canada by the end of the third quarter, which is September 30th. And then there was another PDF that came out that said by the end of 2021, there would be the completion of COVID vaccination in Canada. Which date is the expected date?
It's a hard question, Mackenzie, to with true precision answer, because in fact it depends so much on the approval of the vaccines that are in the pipeline. But look, optimistically, I think we would anticipate and hope that we can have as many Canadians vaccinated by the end of 2021. And I think the variety of vaccines in our portfolio gives us a better chance to be able to do that. We have 7 promising candidates, and they're all different. Obviously, 3 different kinds of technology, but at the end of the day, some that are more difficult to move around, others that are more traditional, the track 1 and track 2 vaccines that you've been hearing about through the technical briefings. Listen, our goal is to have Canadians be vaccinated to the greatest degree possible, because again, vaccination saves lives and it protects us from spread. And this is the goal. The goal is that we can deliver vaccines to provinces and territories, that they can immunize Canadians as quickly as we can actually approve and acquire those vaccines, because we're all looking forward to a faster to normal.
I get that there's a lot of moving targets and that things are changing rapidly, but on the same day, literally like 20 minutes from each other, the goalposts move by 3 months. So is it Q3 or 2021?
Listen, again, I cannot give you a precision. I can only tell you that my goal is as soon as possible. My goal is to vaccinate as many Canadians as soon as possible. And so much of that depends, again, on the approval of the vaccinations. Some of them are still in clinical trials. Some of them have not applied to Health Canada for approval. I can tell you that we have more doses per capita than any other country around the world, which is also, I think, a very good sign that we're well situated to receive, successful vaccines as soon as they become available. And as the health minister, I would just say that vaccination is a critically important tool to ending the spread of COVID-19.
Next question on the phone, operator.
There are no questions registered at this time.
Marika?
Hey, Minister Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. On tomorrow's meeting with the premiers, is the federal government willing to increase the yearly increases to the Canada Health Transfer?
Well, thanks for the question, Marika. What I would say is, first of all, the federal government has been there in unprecedented ways for provinces and territories through the pandemic. over $24 billion in combined supports for provinces and territories, $19 billion through the Safe Restart alone, paid for all of the PPE that we distributed in the spring. The rapid tests have been paid for by the federal government. And listen, I think the provinces and territories know that we've also been there in even providing additional services at no cost, things like sending in the Canadian Red Cross or the Canadian military, for example. And we'll continue to be there for provinces and territories. Those deliberations will be held between the Prime Minister and the Premiers, and I look forward to the conclusion of their talks.
Can the federal government even afford the increase that the provinces are asking for? I mean, if you look at our books now and the debt load that we now have after or midway through COVID, could the federal government even afford to add that debt to or that spending, I should say, to our budget right now?
I think what the federal government could afford or not is probably a question that's best placed with the finance minister, who's doing that important work of making sure that we have our eye on Canada's debt. But also, I think the finance minister has been very clear in saying that we need to actually support Canadians, businesses, and provinces and territories to get through this. Because, in fact, what I know from my background in public health is that ensuring that people have access to healthcare, ensuring that people have access to supports through that financial supports, for example, that we've provided through the pandemic has been a critical component to our pandemic response. So, listen, I think those conversations are important ones, and I look forward to the conclusion of their deliberations.
Chris?
Hi, Chris Reynolds, Canadian Press. This morning, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet said that he would have to convince the Liberal government tomorrow during the First Minister's meeting that healthcare is a provincial priority and jurisdiction, and that the $48 billion that are being transferred via health care transfer payments to the provinces and territories this year are simply not enough. How would you respond to that accusation?
Well, first of all, I would say that I think we fully understand that the provinces and territories have the jurisdiction and the responsibility to deliver health care in their provinces and territories. And that's exactly the approach that we've taken throughout the pandemic. As you know, we've delivered money, oftentimes, and product, actually, to provinces and territories for their use in ways that they deem appropriate. And I will also say this, Canadians also expect quality care no matter where they live, no matter which province or territory you live in. When you talk about long-term care, for example, which is, I think, the nature of the Bloc's questions in particular, all seniors who are living in long-term care deserve to live with dignity and safety. That is, I think, fundamentally been driven home through the pandemic, that too many seniors across the country are living in long-term care homes where the quality of care is abysmal, quite frankly, and we need to do better as a country. And so I think those conversations are critically important. How do we get that balance right? When we're spending money on healthcare, how do we ensure that it is actually improving the care for all Canadian citizens? And so I know that the Prime Minister takes seriously both the independence of provinces and territories, but also our collective responsibility as political leaders to protect the most vulnerable, including seniors in long-term care.
I think the formula for the health care transfer payments is it increases 3% per year. That's the rudimentary formula. Is there any chance that that formula is up for debate tomorrow, or is that set in stone?
Well, I think the Prime Minister has been clear that first we need to get through COVID. First, there is an emergency that is happening across the country, a public health emergency that, by the way, even though vaccines are a great news story today, it is really still just the beginning of vaccination. And we still have provinces in crisis. Alberta has just imposed significant restrictions because they are in crisis. Quebec has sent out notifications while I was in the House of Commons about the requirement of people to reduce their mobilization and their moving around because of increased cases. Ontario is still seeing surging, including in my own riding of Thunder Bay, Superior North, where we have outbreaks in long-term care homes. We're still in a crisis. So I think the first priority for the Prime Minister will be talking to provinces and territories about how we get Canadians together more safely through the next several months. And obviously, I think there is a conversation to be had about the future of healthcare, but I will leave that in the hands of the Prime Minister and the Premiers.
David?
Hey, Minister, thanks so much for coming down. any new money to the provinces for healthcare, should that come with conditions?
Well, I think Canadians expect a quality of care no matter where they live. And I think as we're talking about long-term care, for example, as you know, in the speech, in the fall economics statement, the commitment of $1 billion was attached to the idea that we would work out collectively standards in long-term care. Because what we've seen through the COVID crisis is, in fact, where you live in some cases, has determined whether or not you'll live or die in a long-term care, and that's unacceptable. And so I think, look, we've increasingly said to provinces and territories, no matter where a person lives, they deserve to have quality of care. And so I think it's a balance. I think it's about respecting the jurisdiction of provinces and territories, but also calling on each other to have stronger measurements for Canadians so that they can be assured that no matter where they live, they're going to be able to access basic services and indeed specialized services in some cases.
So what's that balance? What's the line? How do you get that happy medium of, not overstepping your jurisdiction, but also getting those sorts of results that you want to see in long-term care and other spaces? What's the balance?
Well, again, I think there's, there is a balance to be found, and I'm thinking of the work that we're doing right now that got somewhat delayed by COVID on mental health standards. So, you've heard many stories about people, depending on where they live, having poor or no access to mental health and substance use support. And so I think there are ways that we can work collaboratively with provinces and territories if we agree on a collection of, or on a set of standards. I think the relationship is built on having conversations about what those standards look like and coming to agreement, not an imposition by the federal government, but rather those collective conversations with provinces and territories. And I think it's in the interest of all political leaders that we hold ourselves accountable for the money that we spend, and that we are accountable to Canadians who need the resources that that money is designed for.
I will check one more time if we have any question on the phone. Operator?
Still no questions registered at this time.
Marika?
I just want to be clear. So do you think that there should be accountability measures on the money that Ottawa continues to send the provinces?
Well, certainly, I think that Canadians are expecting a certain level and standard of care, and there are some accountability measures, as you know, through the Canada Health Act, and there are ways that the government of Canada...
Explaining how they're spending Ottawa's money so that it's not just replacing the provincial money, but actually is in addition to it.
What I think Canadians don't care about is whose jurisdiction it is. I think what they care about is quality health care. I think that many Canadians perhaps don't even understand how the funding of healthcare happens in Canada, and that's perfectly normal because most Canadians are busy raising their families, taking care of their kids, going to work. But what I do think Canadians expect is that no matter where they live in this country, they have access to equitable care, and that's the goal of our government, and I'm certainly hoping the goal of the premiers, and I'm looking forward, as I said, to the conclusion of their conversation.
So it doesn't concern you then that, for example, Ontario's budget watchdog says like $12 billion is set aside?
Again, what's concerning is that $19 billion was transferred to provinces and territories to get ready for the second wave. And if, in fact, provinces and territories didn't do that and didn't have capacity, for example, to adequately test, contact trace, and track those infections, and that has put Ontarians at a disadvantage. But unfortunately, I don't know the details of that particular investigation. And I can just say that the intent of the federal government was to support in every single way provinces and territories' capacity to be ready for the second wave.
But are you saying that Ontario wasn't ready?
I'm saying that clearly they're in the middle of the surge, and there have been well-documented challenges in many jurisdictions around some of the aspects of containing COVID.
Hi, Minister. I just want to go back on the timeline again. One of your staff texted me while this was going on saying that the Q3 number was predicated on doses delivered and the 2021 number was predicated on the end of the vaccination. Is that your understanding of this?
Mackenzie, I'll just say I'm not going to quibble about doses and when they're arriving. I will repeat my statement to you. My goal as health minister is to enable as many Canadians to be vaccinated as quickly as possible.
We'll move past that. You just said that Canadians are not concerned about jurisdiction. But we have asked you on many occasions about a wide variety of issues related to the pandemic, about lockdowns, about who should approve testing, about a myriad of issues. And the response from you and the government has been, well, it's provincial jurisdiction, we can't do anything there. Why is it any different when it comes to federal funding versus all these other issues, which provincial jurisdiction has been the scapegoat of the reason why the federal government has not acted on many things that have impacted people's lives?
Well, in fact, provincial jurisdiction is not just a scapegoat, it's legal authorities, as you know. And so we've worked with provinces and territories every step of the way. And how we've supported provinces and territories to deliver on their obligations around healthcare delivery and protection of health of their constituents is by providing billions of dollars, providing a whole bunch of stuff that they needed, including tests and PPE, and providing national guidance in which all of their medical officers of health had an opportunity to participate in creating. And so I would say this, of course, Canadians, in terms of delivery of long-term care, don't want to see provinces and the federal government quabble about whose responsibility it is to take care of people in long-term care. I think everybody can agree that every senior deserves to have dignity and safety in no matter where they live. But I can also say that the provinces have a responsibility to deliver health care. The federal government has stepped up in unprecedented ways to help them with that responsibility.
Last question goes to Chris.
Yeah, just one more question for you, Minister. How concerned are you that those 2 allergic reactions in the UK will harm Canadians' trust in the vaccine, especially given that those reactions came on the same day that the vaccine was approved here?
Well, I think Canadians can be really confident in the rigor of Health Canada around the safety evaluation. And of course, that evaluation doesn't stop at as soon as the approval arrives. It continues as we monitor the vaccine in use in Canada and with Canadians. I can say that across the country, as the vaccine is deployed, there will be very significant instructions for care providers about who should receive the vaccine and how they should receive the vaccine. And those instructions are a component of the review of Health Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you.